breaking news today. The foreign policy establishment is in an uproar, claiming that Putin has secured a victory in Alaska. However, the critical question remains, does America benefit from perpetual confrontation, or is it now prioritizing its own interests?
Hello, and welcome to That News Show, where we discuss the latest facts, fakes, and hypocrisy as reported by the legacy media. Let's roll the tape.
Subin reports that while Trump may not have lost, Putin clearly won. But let's consider who defines winning for America. Is it John Bolton, known for his eagerness for foreign wars, or the voters weary of endless conflicts that benefit global elites rather than ordinary Americans? The truth is, the establishment on both sides would have you believe that America's strength lies in its overseas military actions. But perhaps true victory involves avoiding another disastrous war, protecting our borders, and ensuring that foreign policy is dictated by American interests, not by unelected officials in Brussels or Davos. Recall that under the previous Democratic administration, we received lectures on democracy while witnessing chaos in the Middle East and the loss of American jobs. Now, President Trump prioritizes American interests over global agendas. So when Bolton says Putin clearly won, it may just be his frustration that the proponents of perpetual war were thwarted. Perhaps this time the American people truly won. Let's get rolling.
So I actually think, I understand that you said Trump didn't lose. I actually think Putin came out of here more significant a winner because he has no sanctions, no economic or political isolation, and he keeps the war going for what he wants.
Putin's ability to lead the summit without facing new sanctions or increased diplomatic isolation aligns with a long-standing goal of Washington's foreign policy establishment, irrespective of party lines. The prevailing narrative often portrays these summits as a zero-sum game, where any gain for Russia is seen as a loss for America. This mindset has historically entangled us in endless foreign conflicts and has done little to advance the interests of ordinary Americans. The focus should not be on who appeared stronger on the world stage, but on whether American interests are being effectively served. The previous administration's focus on globalist interventionism led to greater instability abroad and reduced security at home. Currently, we are witnessing a practical approach that prioritizes American priorities, avoiding escalation and the potential for another costly war. While it's disappointing that Putin did not agree to a ceasefire in Alaska, rushing into punitive measures would only worsen the conflict and harm American families through higher energy prices and market disruptions. Critics like Bolton are quick to denounce any deviation from a hawkish stance, yet their approach has consistently failed to deter Russian aggression or bring peace to Ukraine. Instead, it has increased Europe's reliance on American military support and marginalized the voices of key regional stakeholders. The absence of European and Ukrainian leaders from these talks is a direct result of previous policies that favored grandstanding over genuine diplomacy. Success should not be measured by Russia's isolation, but by the stability and avoidance of unnecessary escalation. The summit may not have yielded a major breakthrough, but it successfully avoided the kind of reckless confrontation favored by interventionists. Americans are weary of bearing the cost of endless wars and globalist agendas. It is crucial that our leaders prioritize national sovereignty and economic security over the interests of the foreign policy elite. Moving forward, America must steer clear of foreign entanglements, pursue peace through strength, and resist letting establishment voices dictate our response to complex international challenges.
The thing that was interesting to see is just how artful Putin was at tickling Trump's funny bones. He took a shot at Biden, and he said, "I can confirm that the war wouldn't have happened if Trump were there." That's like music to Trump's ears, and you could hear Trump. You could sense that was landed well with him, and then he started talking about Russia.
And Putin's ability to engage effectively was evident, resonating particularly with President Trump. His pointed remarks about the previous U.S. administration and the situation in Ukraine highlighted a significant shift in the tone and substance of American foreign policy from previous Democratic leadership. This change appeals to conservatives and independents alike, many of whom are weary of the persistent interventionism that has characterized Washington for years. Instead of dwelling on who won or lost at the summit, it's more productive to consider what these interactions signify for American priorities. While the Alaska summit didn't result in a ceasefire, it underscored a departure from past policies that prioritize symbolic gestures and punitive measures over practical negotiations. Trump's push for direct, although unconventional, talk suggests a preference for dialogue over escalation, a shift that aligns with the interests of many Americans. The partisan divide remains stark. with critics calling for tougher actions and more aggressive strategies. History suggests that such aggressive postures seldom yield peace or stability. The current administration's decision to avoid being drawn into costly conflicts marks a departure from the globalist approach that has dominated U.S. foreign policy for decades. This shift is particularly relevant as European nations attempt to maintain their influence, concerned about their diminishing role as the U.S. reevaluates its alliances and priorities. Moving forward, the focus shouldn't be on whether Putin gained an advantage, but on whether the U.S. is steering clear of unnecessary foreign entanglements and preserving its sovereignty. The Alaska summit, despite its theatrics, represents a move towards a foreign policy that favors negotiation and restraint over intervention and perpetual commitments. As international diplomacy continues, it's crucial that American leadership remains responsive to the concerns of its citizens rather than the demands of the global elite.
I think in Europe and Ukraine, it's going to be very depressed.
I want to check on Fred Pleitgen in Moscow to see what kind of reaction or coverage this is getting there. Fred?
Yeah, it's getting wall-to-wall coverage, Anderson, here in Russia. And as you can imagine, the Russian state media are pretty happy with the outcome so far. One of the things that's getting played again and again and again is President Trump saying that there could be a follow-up summit, and President Putin then saying next time in Moscow. That certainly is something that the Russian press is sort of zeroing in on, generally saying that they believe that the meeting went very well for Vladimir Putin, obviously outlining the fact that Vladimir Putin does not appear to have made substantial concessions to the U.S. president.
Fred Pleitgen's coverage from Moscow, amplified by Russian state media, portrays the summit as a diplomatic victory for Vladimir Putin, emphasizing the possibility of a future meeting in Moscow without significant concessions to the United States. This narrative, typical of a controlled media environment, aims to demonstrate Russian strength and legitimacy globally. CNN, by deploying correspondents like Pleitgen in Moscow and Nick Patton-Walsh in Kiev, provides a broad perspective on international reactions to the summit. Their on-the-ground reporting offers valuable insights into European and Ukrainian viewpoints. The network's editorial balance is questionable, often featuring experts like John Bolton, whose interventionist views dominate without enough counterbalance from proponents of a more restrained, America-first policy. CNN's reporting accurately notes the absence of concrete concessions from Putin, yet it frames this as a U.S. failure, adhering to a zero-sum perspective that overlooks potential benefits of non-interventionist strategies that align with many Americans' preferences for avoiding foreign conflicts. Technical issues during broadcasts, such as communication breakdowns, have occasionally detracted from CNN's professionalism, impacting the credibility of their coverage. Furthermore, CNN's reliance on establishment experts and former officials who favor intervention skews their analysis, leaving little room for alternative viewpoints that question the value of prolonged involvement in European conflicts and its impact on American families. Overall, CNN's extensive international coverage and timely updates offer valuable context, but the editorial approach often reflects outdated metrics of diplomatic success. As the situation evolves, the coverage should focus more on advancing American priorities, maintaining national sovereignty, and avoiding unnecessary conflicts, while ensuring accountability for those advocating aggressive foreign policies without considering domestic repercussions.
The fact that the Russian president spoke about the root causes of the conflict and that those need to be addressed, Russia's security concerns as well, that's the exact same rhetoric that we've actually been hearing from Vladimir Putin since the beginning of the full-on invasion of Ukraine. And looking at how this evening unfolded, certainly if you see some of the Russian officials that we've sort of been monitoring, Anderson, that have been talking about this, like, for instance, the spokeswoman for the Russian Foreign Ministry, she said, look, people have been saying for the last 3 years that Russia is completely isolated, and now they're seeing President Trump roll out the red carpet for the Russian president on U.S. territory.
Russia's president has reiterated what he perceives as the root causes of the conflict and Russia's security concerns, a narrative familiar since the Ukraine invasion began. While some establishment voices in Washington and the media quickly claim this as a victory for Moscow, it's important to recall that these voices have historically driven the U.S. into costly foreign engagements that have drained American resources and economically burdened working families. Financially, the lack of new sanctions or escalatory actions means American households can avoid another surge in energy prices and market instability. Historically, when Washington intensifies pressure on Russia, it triggers volatility in global oil and gas markets, increasing costs for consumers at the gas pump and for heating their homes. This impacts small manufacturers, family farms, and trucking companies first, with ripple effects throughout the economy. Fortunately, this administration is focusing on economic stability at home, a shift from previous policies that led to soaring inflation and escalating energy costs. In the long term, the real danger is the potential for the U.S. to become more entangled in a European conflict that does not directly affect the security or prosperity of American families. Despite this, figures like John Bolton advocate for continued confrontation, overlooking the financial and human cost to American taxpayers and military personnel. The previous administration's globalist strategies compromised our national security and economic stability without deterring Russian aggression or significantly aiding Ukraine. The summit's lack of significant breakthroughs might disappoint those who equate success with dramatic gestures, but for American businesses and families, stability and restraint are more beneficial. Industries such as retail, construction, and agriculture thrive on steady markets and predictable trading conditions. A simple analysis of household expenses would show that disruptions in energy and commodity markets disproportionately affect the middle class. While European leaders and Ukrainian officials may feel overlooked, it's time for them to assume greater responsibility for their security. American taxpayers have long borne the cost of defending Europe, often facing criticism from those same allies. A more balanced approach, where the U.S. acts as a prudent partner rather than the world's policeman, aligns with national sovereignty and limited government principles. The notion that Putin won by merely attending the summit distracts from the essential question: are American interests being served? Prioritizing non-escalation, energy affordability, and domestic concerns offers a more favorable outcome than further saber-rattling and intervention. The failures of the previous Democrat administration are still vivid in voters' minds, highlighting a stark contrast in approaches. As developments unfold, the focus should remain on safeguarding the prosperity and security of American families, rather than engaging in a geopolitical chess match that offers little benefit to the average citizen. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Tonight, we once again heard the old guard lecture us about Russia, as if American strength is solely measured by our foreign entanglements. The truth is that the real winners are the American people when our leaders prioritize our country over the global elite and the war machine. The previous administration of Biden and Harris compromised our interests for foreign agendas and endless conflicts. Now, under President Trump, the White House is taking a stand against these games. One has to wonder, why is there such fear of peace and sovereignty? Think about that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your comments below. This has been That News Show. That's all I have for now.